Welcome to Podnutz, episode number 62, the computer repair roundtable show where we get three technicians on the show. They each bring a computer repair topic to talk about, and we kind of share our ideas about that topic and opinions and views between all the techs in the room here. And, well, not technically a room, a virtual room. And then we also each go another round and we give a tip each before the show ends. Then we'll read some emails and play some voicemails. And hopefully you will be enlightened computer repair wise listening to this show. That's the goal. Let me introduce the guests. First off, we have the door-to-door geek, Steve McLaughlin. Yo, Door.
Hello, all.
Thanks for being on the show.
Oh, no problem.
Matt Rainey, for the first time on Podnutz. He is from Podnutz Pro. You may have heard Matt there. But on this show, this is his first time. We're happy to have him on, and we're going to bombard him with some questions. What's up, Matt?
Oh, same old. It's late, but doing good.
Good.
How are you?
I'm doing good. I don't know what you got yourself into with this show.
Well, we'll see. I'm sure it'll be fun.
Yeah, no, we will make it that way. Definitely. Then Liam Tidwell from liamtech.com. Yo, Liam.
That's me.
I see ya. All right. Let's get rolling with Door. Door, what do you want to talk about tonight?
To be honest, what I want to talk about is kind of timeless. Tools come and go, operating systems come and go. The way you want to handle your business can come and go. It can change. The one constant I think everyone needs to focus on and practice on to be successful in this business is communication. And when I say communication, I don't mean communication. I mean, A, shutting your hole, letting the customer vent as much as they want to vent, talk as much as they want to talk. And two, learning how to read each customer and communicate back on their level. Talking over customers or under customers never leads to a good experience for them. You know, you always want to try to communicate on a level they're comfortable with.
Yeah.
And at the same token, if you become adept at that, then you can basically steer conversations exactly how you want to steer them and where you want them to go.
Right.
Too many people out there focus too hard on getting rid of this specific virus, you know, making your install the quickest it can possibly go. Not enough people out there focus on how to talk to customers, how to deal with customers, how to make customers feel like, A, you have their full attention, B, you completely understand what they're talking about, and your goal is to make them happy.
Yeah. Let me just say, if it's true, communications is key in so many ways, especially, well, first of all, if you think you're smart and you feel the need that all your customers need to know how smart you are by the language you use, then get over yourself, because they're not going to understand it. And the only reason to use like big, long words that your customers aren't going to understand would be to confuse them. If that is your purpose, then use all the language you want. They will be totally confused, and they will probably not like you because you're that guy that comes over and says all these things that they do not understand. So it's not good business to confuse your customers. That's just one of the reasons why not to use verbiage that is not understood. What do you other guys think?
Totally agree. I mean, knowing how to fix the problem is one thing. How to deal with a customer, you know, I think that's probably the hardest thing for a lot of us, just because, I mean, you know.
Because we're techs.
Exactly. Yeah, we're used to dealing with machines. It doesn't answer a question unless we ask it. Customers are constantly answering questions you didn't ask. You ask them a yes/no question. 12 minutes later, they haven't answered it, but you know everything about Molly, their dog, and their children, and it's so. Did we need to back up your computer or not? You know,
Right.
But let the people tell their stories. Let them vent. Let them get off their chest, and then, you know, it's just reassure them you're there to help them with the problem. You don't got to go into the specifics unless they ask. You know, I mean, there's no reason to explain something to somebody that they haven't asked for.
Absolutely.
Right, that's true. Unfortunately, a lot of times they do want you to explain it to them. It might be something simple. They might say, "Oh, my email wasn't working. What was wrong with it?" And you can give them the simple answer. Well, whatever the simple answer is. Well, what does that mean exactly? And at that point, I do give them the technical explanation, and they have a blank face.
Why do you do that?
Because they asked.
Yeah, but
I
you
give
know
them the
it's going to
simple answer
confuse.
first. Let's say
You
their
can
email
make,
wasn't
you can,
working because
Mhm.
they tried to send a huge 800 meg attachment. And the simple answer is you can't send out mail with large attachments.
I know, but is it an attempt to shut them up that you give them the complex answer?
Well, I'll give them the first one I give them is the one that should be for, like Doris saying, at their level. It happened because you tried to send a large email attachment. And then they say, well, what does that mean exactly? What, can you explain it more? And then I tell them, yes, and I give them the full long thing, email, the SMTP servers, the limits, what email is intended for, and because they're not going to understand. They're not satisfied with the short answer for a user level. They want the in-depth answer. And then just to get a blank face.
But does the in-depth answer have to use the in-depth lingo, or can you just give them?
I do, because
why?
I've given them the simple answer,
right?
And when they press me for a more detailed answer, I give it to them.
Okay.
I'm kind of with them on this one. I'll give them the best answer I can as far as this is kind of your level. Here's your answer, but if you're going to ask me for more detail, I'm going to give you the best detail I have, because I know after I give you that answer, you're either going to say, or you're going to say, can you say that simpler? And then I'll say the thing I said the first time.
Right.
Not to mention, I'm billing by the hour, so if you want to talk to me all day, that's fine.
I guess seriously, it comes back to intent. I mean, I can give a simple answer with simple language, or I could give an advanced answer with simple language. And I could give an advanced answer with advanced language. It just depends on what I want to do. If I want the customer to not talk to me, or do I want the customer to actually understand what I'm saying? You know, it depends on your mood. I guess it depends on what you want to get out of the conversation. If you're getting paid by
my first response is usually directed, like Doris said, is directed at their level. I know my customers. I've been dealing with most of them for 10 years. So I know what level they can understand.
Right.
So that's the level I give the first response. So the next, when they want more clarification, I give more clarification, because I know they're not going to understand anything above what I told them already.
Right.
Yeah. And I would say the couple things is, when you first are new to a customer, you should be more lenient to the fluff kind of thing. And then as time goes on, this is a business, I really have to go. My time is kind of vital kind of thing. Be gentle when you make that transition. The second thing is, don't assume. I learned the worst thing you can do is assume by looking at your client that you know what level they're at. For instance, had a customer yesterday. He's under 32, 33 years old. I asked him to text message me his address to his house, and he said, I don't know if you want me to do that. I really don't know this text messaging thing.
What was he, like Amish or something?
He was like 30 years old. I don't know. I guess he's too busy playing Xbox to understand it. I don't know.
Gotcha.
But and at the same token, don't be shocked if you come across a grandmother that knows how to run Arch Linux. You know what I mean?
I think one listens to our show.
I know, which is why she rocks. And the last thing, the only bad part I've seen to come out when you over-explain things like that, Matt, is then you get the inevitable, well, how do we stop it from happening in the future?
Well, they ask that anyway. Even with the simple answer, they're going to ask that anyway.
But there is no answer. We don't let anybody send any emails.
Well, in that example, it's in our Exchange server, it's set to bounce back. They get a bounce back message saying you've exceeded the message limit, and I tell them the way to prevent it is to not send large email attachments. If you don't want them to bounce back,
that's not preventing it from happening in the future. For my executives, that I get questions like, we had this hardware failure on this server over the weekend. How do we prevent that from happening? We stop using computers.
Well, I've had people ask me that too. They have a small business. They have one server. When the server goes down, they ask me, how can we prevent being down when our server goes down? And I can tell them, well, there's things we can do we can get a device, and I give them simple terms just like this. There's a device we can put in that runs a constant backup of your server. If your server goes down, we can take that backup, boot it up in a virtual machine, which is not a physical server, it's a virtual machine, and you're back up and running. And they say, "Oh, that sounds great. How much would that cost?" And I give them a quote, and they say, "Wow, that's expensive." Yes, it is expensive, but this will accomplish what you're wanting to do. There's no,
Yeah.
a lot of times they want to do it and they want to know how to do it, but they assume it's going to be free.
Well, yeah. Yeah, the one thing I think I found out in my limited enterprise business is the scale of price is heavily determined on how quick do you need to be back up. If you can be down 2-3 days, then the cost of a good backup is far less. If you need to be back up within 3 minutes when a server goes down, that backup solution is money. And most customers don't understand what are the driving factors in these prices. And I think communicating that kind of thing, that's the kind of thing that makes you a winner, that makes your customer like dealing with you, and and talk good about you to other people.
What, communication in general, or communicating your price?
Communicating what they deem as being necessary that they know. And for most of the customers, when you're dealing with anything that costs any amount of money more than a couple $100, they want at least some kind of justification on why.
All right.
And being able to communicate to them in a way that they can understand and communicate to someone else, I think is really all they're looking for, especially in business, because they usually got to tell somebody else why we're spending this money and justify it.
Right.
Well, see, in small business, we don't have that problem. I'm usually dealing with the decision maker. So I explain it to him, give him or her the quote. We talk about it, so I don't have to usually have that relay issue in a small business. In a larger business, you're going to have that, but in a smaller business, we don't usually deal with that.
Yeah, we should probably make mention that Matt deals with small businesses almost exclusively, right, Matt?
Right.
Okay. And Dor and William, residential?
I
Mostly,
deal with,
yeah.
my network has over 2,800 computers and servers.
Okay. All right, so you do residential and you do that.
That's where I need the communication skills more, I'll say.
Okay.
With residential, to be honest, to me it's much easier because most of the time, I don't want to say they don't care as much, but they're just like, just get it working. Just do what you got to do. And in business, justification always has to come with everything. And the people you're dealing with aren't necessarily tech savvy, but they want to be able to turn to somebody and explain it to them.
Right.
So you got to be able to, and it's honestly harkens back to one of my things. I believe there's different kinds of in intelligence, especially when it comes to talking to people. There's the ability to take something incredibly complex and break it down into bite-sized portions that make it understandable to even the layman. And then there's the ability to take simple, mundane task and discuss it in such a complicated way. You can basically take a molehill, turn it into a mountain kind of intelligence. And they're both intelligence. I find the one to be useful is taking complex things and breaking them down to people understanding them. And to be honest, I think that's part of the reason I got as far as I got in my enterprise business.
Pretty cool.
Where I quite literally started out getting paid $6 an hour to stack boxes. And now I'm getting paid over $50,000 a year, helping to manage over 2,300, 400 computers.
So you're still handling boxes, but their boxes are computers.
And ironically enough, probably about the same amount of money, because what was in those boxes back in the day had a high street value. I'll just say that.
All right. Anything else, guys, on communication?
Yeah, I like to use analogy just because it helps people understand, like the whole, well, why do we need this backup? Well, you said you want to be able to get it up and running right away. So basically, you're going to own 2 cars, and we're just going to take the crap out of one car when it dies and put it in the other one. You drive away, you're done. versus we need to send the car off, get it fixed, and get it up and running
I see.
in a week from now. Just simple analogies.
Yeah,
Everyday
I
things that
agree.
people understand.
Analogies are always good. It's probably good to have a couple in the bullpen, so you just.
Yep.
I didn't. I always tried explaining things that didn't work out that well. People still like me, but it wasn't.
Yeah, but see, most of mine stem from comedy I heard when I was younger. Like, it's a cracker. You haven't had a cracker in a long time. And boy, that's a good cracker. But is that a Ritz? I'm not good at.
I don't even know what you're talking about, to be honest.
I know, exactly. See, that's bad communication.
I'm going to use that in my next client's office.
All right, Matt, what do you want to talk about for tonight's show?
I was going to talk about Ritz crackers, but since we already talked about that, it actually kind of goes back to Door's communication, and it's making recommendations to customers.
Okay.
Customers are going to ask you your opinion. What kind of hardware should I get? What brand? HP, Dell, doesn't matter. What antivirus should I run? What should I do? And really, in my opinion, making recommendations to customers is a no-win situation.
Really?
Because I can tell them,
Ding, ding.
we have a lot of customers. We're an HP reseller and a Dell reseller for hardware. It doesn't matter. I have one specific company I'm thinking about. They used to use Dell computers. Well, they had issues with them, crashes, hard drives going out, blue screens. So a long time ago, they switched to HP. They said, what do you recommend? Well, we're an HP reseller. We use HP computers, servers, notebooks. Oh, well, we'll go with that. So this company has been using HP servers and workstations and notebooks for years, 4 or 5 years at least, with no issues. Well, recently, one guy who told me he was taking his notebook and throwing it in his back seat, his hard drive crashed. Well, they didn't like it. And the owner said, is this because it's an HP? I said, no, it's because what the user was telling me, he takes it and throws it in his back seat. And then they had another computer, HP, that was blue screening. So 2 computers they may have 50 computers or 60 computers. 2 computers. Now, the last quote they asked me for today, they said, we want Dell in uppercase. Dell. Because these HPs are just doing no good. So recommendations, I tell them they're all about the same. If I had to pick, I would pick and then pick what you want to pick.
Yeah, but
I
Matt,
don't tell them
they used HPs for a while.
HP's the best, Dell's the best. I don't tell anybody that.
That's
Because
cool.
any issue happens, they're going to say, well, you told me to get this. And it goes the same for antivirus too, or any software for that matter. The same customer, and this is a different customer. They use Trend Micro on their offices out of their main office. It's Trend Micro Internet Security. And we don't control these customers. We control the ones in-house, but we don't control the roaming salespeople that do whatever they want with their own notebooks. They would get infections. They'd send it to us. And this would go on. They're using Trend Micro. One of them we had to reload. So they didn't have their code for Trend Micro. So I said, I'm going to put Security Essentials on it and send it back to you. When you find your code, call me, we'll install it. Now, don't forget, he sent this to us because he got some infection and he had Trend Micro on it.
Right.
I put Security Essentials on it. It got infected again, I don't know, 6 months later. And they said, should we go back to Trend Micro? And I had to reply, I'll put on whatever you want to use. It's your decision. I said, this particular person got infected with Trend Micro. They got infected with Security Essentials. It goes back to browsing habits, downloading pirated music, downloading cracked movies, and has nothing to do with the antivirus. No antivirus will protect you from bad browser habits. And I explain that to them, and they make their decision, and it's just funny. So, I mean, I don't know
they still want
other people's experience with recommending things, but I find recommending things can come back to haunt you if you give your opinion.
It's true. I don't know if I have the longevity that you have, Matt, but I recommended, I was putting AVG on computers for a while, and then they kept coming back. That's when I started selling Norton out of the shop. But I think you have to recommend. I think you have to recommend something. You can't just say it's your decision. They have no basis of data to base that
But
decision.
no, I
off.
recommend something. I'll tell them what we use. We use this. So if they want to use what I use, I tell them what we use.
Okay, that's probably the
And if
best
they say,
thing
was that better than the other ones? And that's when I tell them, well, there's no perfect antivirus.
Right.
We've had less trouble with this one than other ones.
Right.
I'm not saying that tells them, one, it's not perfect. It's just we've had less issues in our experience.
That's a good way of putting it.
I don't tell them you should definitely use this product. This is what you should do. It's not even any doubt in my mind. You should use this.
What do you guys
That's
think?
where you get in the problems. And it depends on the customer. The customer may come back and say, look, this is your fault. I got this hardware from you with this antivirus, and now it's blue screen, and you need to fix it for free because this is what you told me to get. And
Right.
that's kind of what happens sometimes.
What about you guys?
It's kind of you got to find a happy medium. As far as recommendations, I'll give people, here's a good option, here's a better option, here's the option I'm going to recommend, medium price, higher price, highest price. But you got to make them understand it comes down to them. Again, analogies. Hey, you can buy this car, this car, this car. They're all brand new. They all have the same warranty. But if you drive like an a-hole, you're going to break the car. You're going to piss other people off. Somebody's going to run into you. It's teaching them how to use a computer properly, or not to abuse these things, or just managing their expectations, I guess, is a better way to put it.
That's a nice way of putting it too.
Yeah, and I would say verbiage to me is key on this. When someone asks me what is the best, I say, well, there is no best. It depends on what you're looking for. I'll always put it back on them. But like computer manufacturers, I'm with Matt. I say they're all so close to being the same. It almost doesn't matter. Buy one that's on sale. Buy the one that's the cheapest right now, because the actual innards, 6 to 1, half dozen of another, unless of course it's an HP laptop, then I'll tell them not to buy it. But like AV, I had a guy, a pretty smart guy, not computer smart at all. He asked me, what AV should I get? And I kind of agree with Matt, but I believe it doesn't matter what you really buy as an AV, and it doesn't matter how safe you are as a web surfer. New York Times infected over 2 million computers last year with a bad ad, with a drive-by exploit on Firefox and IE, and pwn people. To a degree, it doesn't matter what you have as AV, as long as you as a user, once you notice something is weird, you notify the authorities ASAP. And I said to him, I said, look, the best AVs out there, the best by far, only pick up like 78, 79% of the infections. The ones out there that are free only catch like 72, 69 to like 72% of the infections. So it's a question, do you want this much increased to not have to talk to me? If you do, then we're going to buy an AV.
Yeah. As far as recommendations on boxes, I was with you on computers, boxes. I was with you on desktops. They're to me, I would say they're all the same, because they pretty much were. But I worked on so many laptops that I'd start to get some machines in that I actually started to like more than others. For a while, Toshibas were solid for me. I liked them. Now they might, like I said before, they might as well put Play School on top of them, because they're just freaking toys. But and more so today, laptops are kind of all cheap, plasticky, the same. But they went through their evolutions when I was working on them, where some were built better than others. Then they'd make crappy models. And then another company would come on strong and make some decent models, and then they'd make crappy models. Because I was opening them up and checking them out. And so I had some good recommendations that I thought were valid for laptops, which I would recommend. And because we are the professionals, quote, to the customer, they're going to listen to what you say. So if you do make a recommendation, they're probably going to buy that thing. So
Right, they probably will. And sometimes what I asked them, like an analogy, Liam saying, if they ask me who makes the best computer, I ask them who makes the best vehicle. Let's say Ford. Okay, is that your opinion, or do you have some documentation to back that up?
What,
I'm
you
telling them they're not
that's-
picking my car.
That's an opinion too.
Matt's
who makes
like,
the best
can you,
vehicle?
Matt's like, can you show me a Consumer Reports on that model, please?
So, and when you put it in that terms and say, well, yeah, I guess so, because any article you read is gonna have their opinions. Those are all opinions.
Right.
Yeah.
I told this one client when the hard, I said these vendors use the same hard drives. The hard drives are one of 4 or 5 vendors. They put the same parts in them. One has a HP logo on it. One has a Dell logo on it. It's the same stuff. Now she forgets in this particular instance that the reason they switched because they had so many problems. But we'll see what happens when she gets her new Dell notebook next week.
Yeah, and I tell people it's like a crapshoot. You really don't know what kind of quality you're going to get until it's been a couple years, because everybody makes good stuff, everybody makes bad stuff. It's like doctors and lawyers and car mechanics and everything else. There's good ones and bad ones. This Dell you get might last for 5 years. Great. 3 months from now, the hard drive could die.
I'll tell you who always had the leg up in hardware, I would say, is Mac. I would tell people they should check out Macs.
I tell them that too, Steve.
Yeah, right.
I do.
I do as well.
Somebody
actually.
brought in their computer
I
last
think
week and she was infected. This is a home user. And she goes, I want you to just put on whatever is going to make me not get infected again.
Would you put OS 10 on it?
No. I said, well, have you thought about getting the Mac?
It is true. I mean, the hardware is pretty solid comparatively to other laptops. All right, anything else on recommendations, guys?
I feel like all the large OEMs that their desktops are kind of crap. I mean, you get the cheapest components. It's almost all Foxconn stuff, even the Apple hardware.
Yeah, it is.
I tell people, look, let me build it for you. I've gone through these problems. You have somebody locally at the desktop, I'm not going to put the lowest rated power supply that'll actually run the machine in there. And then as far as laptops, 2 recommendations, Lenovo or Apple. And really, it's just kind of a fit and finish thing. Again, they're all the same guts. They just Lenovo, they've got their business background from back in the day at IBM, so I think they've got a little bit of a leg up there on longevity. Plus, again, the fit and finish is a little bit nicer, and kind of the same thing with the Macs, but that's just more the style of the current, the unibody. They take
Right.
abuse a lot better, especially with the MagSafe power adapter and everything.
Yes.
Yeah, I'll say for me, the last 2 times someone asked me what desktop they should buy, to be honest, I told them to buy a Frostbite system. And the only reason, the main reason is because I know the owner on a first name basis. I said, if I knew Michael Dell on a first name basis, I'll tell you to get a Dell.
Not if he was a douche.
Well,
no, Jonathan's a cool guy. He's got a great purpose.
If I have an issue, I just call him up.
There you go. We should also mention, Dor, about Frostbite Systems is I don't think there's too many places like what he does. He installs Linux on machines, and you tell him, Dor.
And he gives a percentage of the money you pay for the computer back to the distribution that you got on the computer. The hardware is all open-friendly hardware, which means you could, if you wanted to, install a Microsoft-based operating system on it, and it would just work. Everything on the system would just work. You would not have to spend any time doing any investigation for any hardware drivers whatsoever. Here, to me, is honestly one of the big pluses to his system is, for my customers, if I get hit by a bus, I know they're going to get dealt with in a very professional manner without sitting on hold for 3 hours to talk to some guy in Pakistan who says his name is Bob.
All right.
I want my customers to be happy, and being as small as I am, I know who cannot give my customers the same level of service, and I know Dell can't.
Good point. All right, Liam, you want to take it away? Take it away with what you want to bring up.
Sure. One more thing on that whole deal. If somebody's really just deep entrenched in, I'm worried about this, I'm worried about that, I try and manage expectations. I say, look, nothing's 100%. That's why, hardware is just a part of this. We're going to do proper backups. We're going to protect you this way. We're going to do this for you, so that if that does happen, it's not a big deal.
Gotcha.
So I just want to talk. We got to be creative in our solutions sometimes. I had a goofy machine come in and just it was one creative solution after another, and it's just you got to think outside the box, and you got to be willing to try different things sometimes. So I had a laptop come in, not booting. That's what they told me anyway. So I get it in, go to power it on, just a black screen says, "Hey, clock reset." Basically the CMOS battery's dead.
Okay.
So okay, no worries. Go in there, BIOS, plug it in, see if it's gonna hold it or not. Maybe they've just gone and messed something up. Fix the settings in there, boot it up. Just they've had some sort of horrendous damage to the OS. That can be dealt with, no problem. So start working on a backup. Get a solid backup, best I can there. Run some tests. Looks like a bad hard drive, and that's another story. But here's the thing that really kind of messed me up, just kind of blew me out of the water. I go to plug it into my network. I plug it into my network. My whole network just dies. So whether it was electrical or something in the machine that was causing problems, whatever it was, basically what happened, it killed the WAN port on my freaking router.
No way.
Yes.
Was this thing damaged? Like they dropped it damaged or what?
No. I mean, well, there's some physical damage. So I'll real quick aside, the hard drive, when I pulled it out, because I'm still suspecting hard drive with this machine, the way it was acting. So I pulled the hard drive to put a separate one in and do a clean install and see how it runs to make sure it's not, something else in the machine. Just roll the hard drive out. Well, as I'm doing that, there's a pin missing. This is an old IDE hard drive. It's pin 43. So it's just a ground pin, which is probably one of the best ones we could be missing because there's multiple ground pins. But, I mean, ground's pretty important as far as power goes. I mean, you really want to have a pipe out as big as your pipe in. Technically, ground's your pipe in, but whatever. We won't get into that. So I lucked out. I was able to get all the data off of it. But, I mean, they broke a pin off the damn hard.
This thing went through some horrendous damage.
Yeah.
But go ahead.
So back to the network. So I scramble, I try everything. I finally narrow it down to my router because I've got multiple routers and well, one's the router, the rest are just switches basically. But anyways, I narrow it down to my main router and then finally narrow it down to the WAN ports. Something, whether it was just incidental when I plugged it in or it was just a combination of things, but it sure seemed to be this laptop. So at that point, I get myself a new router. I got to have a router. I've got multiple systems here going all the time. And I'm like, well, how am I going to mitigate this from happening in the future? Because the last thing I want to do is ever have that happen again. I mean, it's probably a once in a lifetime thing, but you still want to be able to try and mitigate that from happening again.
So you stuck some gum in the Ethernet port?
Oh, no. So I went through, did the reinstall, verified they were okay with that. Hey, bad hard drive, put the new hard drive in, transfer the data over. 2 files I couldn't get off the whole machine. So like I say, totally lucked out that it was just a ground pin. But so my solution for that is get a wireless router, and put it in bridge mode. So worst case scenario, I'm killing a cheap little router, not my entire network. And so that'll be the test for hardline, LAN ports from now on is plugging into my bridge network as opposed to my actual network. So just kind of things like that, and then. Oh
wait, what did it do? Did it fry the cheap router?
Nothing happened. So like I say, I had no idea where it stemmed from, but the second I plugged in is when my network died. Whether that was incidental or not.
I don't think so. When you picked this thing up and kind of shook it around, was there like little noises like you heard inside, like things jingling around?
No, it's running great now, other than the hard drive damage, the CMOS battery, and the corrupt operating system. It was fine.
Interesting. They dropped that down the stairs.
Who knows? But so another one. So this has one of those older style CMOS batteries that's soldered to the board, right?
Mm.
So instead of going online and ordering a $14 battery and waiting a week for it to show up and then resoldering it in, here we are. I'm going to send you a file in the chat there, Steve. This is what I did. I took a regular coin battery like you would put in a normal motherboard, a desktop. Soldered some leads on, covered it with some heat shrink, found a place that would be nice and safe and out of the way in the machine, and then wired the leads into the old one for where the original battery was. So instead of, the 5 minutes it took to do that, and it was really a quick process because I've got the soldering. I've got the soldering iron out anyway to pull the old battery. So it's 5 minutes and a $2 battery instead of a $20 battery and an extra week of waiting,
Yeah, I can't pull that picture up, man. I'm sorry.
You know what? I can share my screen. I keep forgetting about that.
Yes. Share the screen. It did save, but this, oh, there it is. Good. Let me pull this over.
So if you look here, this is the original battery, little tiny coin battery. This is where it was soldered in. Pulled it out. Like I say, this is just a normal CR 3025, 3032, whatever it is. Wrapped, I've scuffed it, soldered in the leads, heat shrink, and found a nice place to put it.
Damn, that looks like something I would do.
And where it's a 7-year-old machine, that battery, that teeny little battery lasted 7 years. This giant battery is going to last till the damn thing rots apart.
Yeah, next week. That's pretty awesome, dude. I like the innovativeness. You guys have anything to share on the subject of ingenuity?
I don't know. On that computer, I would have said it's time for a new computer, but that's just me.
Well, I know them, and I know that was not an option.
Yeah, I've had a couple customers like that. What's wrong with it? It works fine.
And for what they do, it really does. They just needed to get it back to a state that it was usable for them.
Yeah. Cool. Good stuff, Liam.
And I don't really have anything to discuss because, like I said, I was confused about the format of this.
I know. They were like Podnutz daily items. No, I mean, hey, I admit, I just put you guys on the show and just pretend like you guys know what you're talking about. So.
Wait, you don't think we know?
I mean, as far as the format, when that came out totally wrong. I'm basically trying to agree that the
just know what the format of the show is.
The format changed, and there's too many shows with the word Podnutz in them. So, anything else you guys want to add as far as getting creative, the whole subject of that, or not?
I do agree. You always got to keep your mind open to other possibilities. If you can save your customer money and still make them just as happy, why not?
Oh, yeah. Give them what they want. All right?
I can't always give them what they want, but...
Fill their needs.
Fill their needs.
Yeah. Sometimes what they want is a new computer for $10, but...
Oh, yeah. That's not going to work.
Well, they want to be intoxicated, apparently.
Hey, let's pick Matt's brain a little bit. I know we have some... Matt works exclusively small business pretty much, and he's definitely in favor of setting up servers for these businesses. And we've talked on Podnutz in the past about maybe using a NAS in certain cases, or Gmail or Google, whatever it's called, Google Apps, stuff like that, instead of using like Exchange. Any of you guys want to ask Matt anything about that while we have him on? As far as like what situation would be good to use a server or a NAS instead of a server, and any arguments which will ensue would be pleasantly heard by us.
Are you trying to start something, Steve?
No, I have a feeling Door's in agreement with myself and Matt. It really depends on the customer's needs. If it's like a small business, maybe upwards of 10 people, and all their need is basic file sharing, and simple email, so maybe hosted Exchange and a NAS is going to work out for them. But I mean, there really is no simple answer. It just depends on the needs of the customer. I mean, that's what we're there for.
Yeah, but what
We're supposed to know
do the needs require a server or not?
Well, that gets into really talking with a customer to find out what they want to do and what their plans for growth. If they say, I've only got 4 employees now, but I want to be able to do this in the near future. I plan on adding 5 salespeople that are going to be out of the office, on the road. They need to have a constant connection to be able to update, check these work orders or our inventory on our system over here. So there's a lot of different things. If I've put a server in for a company with 4 people, because what they wanted and the software they needed to run required a dedicated server. But maybe without that software, I might not have done it. But they wanted things like remote web workplace, because the person who started this business came from a place that had remote web workplace and Outlook web access, and they wanted active sync on their phones. I mean, they could have gone with hosted exchange, but that really wasn't popular or really even around when this server was put in.
So they were familiar with it.
They were familiar with it, and they didn't want to go back to the functionality of a peer-to-peer setup because they knew what they'd be missing if they didn't go with it.
Well, when would you set up a peer-to-peer setup, Matt? If you
What I don't like about it?
No, when would you set up a peer-to-peer setup for a company? If you walked into a place and they said, Matt, what do we need? What would be best for us? Would you ever say peer-to-peer?
Yeah, I have a few customers that do that. They don't share any files. They only use Peachtree. So Peachtree doesn't need a dedicated machine for 3 people.
Right.
They don't do that much. They pretty much do email. They create Word documents, Excel documents, and they have Peachtree. They work fine in a peer-to-peer setup. They don't want their mail hosted in-house. They're using, I think, AOL mail.
Oh, man.
Which is ridiculous, but they don't want to change. I told them we could get them their own domain name. We could host it for them, but they don't want it. They were happy with their AOL email account that they say all their customers had, and it was just 3 computers. I've got many, and our referrals come from businesses, so I don't get a lot of 2 and 3 people companies that are really calling us for help.
Right.
Because a 2 or 3 or 4 man shop that's looking for just a peer-to-peer setup doesn't want to pay our hourly rate.
Right.
They call their friend's son or their next door neighbor or that kind of thing. But we do have customers that have peer-to-peer setups. Now, some of them I think should have a server because they call constantly with things that if they had a server, it wouldn't be an issue. And I tell them it's my opinion their support cost over the next year would be reduced greatly if they had a server with central administration. Now, they may do it, they may not.
What kind of things do people call you about and then you say that make you think that they need a server?
Well, they want to add an email address. Their email is hosted by somebody. They won't let us move it. It's hosted by somebody. So they want a new user. It's a local user. They've got to go create it on all the other computers if they want to share something. They've got to call another vendor to get an email address created. And that's a whole hassle because they call and they get voicemail and they have to call back. That it takes them a couple days from start to finish to set up a new user with a new email account. With a server, it'd be done in 3 minutes.
Gotcha.
And they call us for that, and we had to call that company. So it takes more time, and they get a bigger bill from us because it took us more time to get this resolved.
Right.
Some customers have us host application servers for them to where they connect to our servers to run their application. I think it's much more expensive for them that way. If they had their own server in-house and hosted their own applications over the past 5 years, they would have paid much less than they paid us over the 5 years. Now, that makes less money for us, but it's better for the customer. And we've told them, we recommend you host us on your office. If you don't want, here's a price for that. here's a price for us to host it. They chose for us to host it, and they've had performance issues because they're running it on a terminal server they don't want to replace because they gave us a terminal server to put in our office for them to access.
Mhm.
So just a lot of things, different situations where I feel that a server in-house for the customer would be better performance for them and cheaper in the long run.
Gotcha. Guys, got anything to add on this?
I don't have really anything to add per se, but I had a question.
Yeah.
Matt. Have you ever, would you ever, do you think you would ever suggest a Google Apps for Business for any customer?
No.
Okay, can I ask why?
Well, the main reasons, we have our own mail servers that we host mail. And so we can host a POP account or an hosted Exchange account. So since I have those servers in place, I'm going to recommend the things that I have control over, as opposed to giving them to some other company and letting them do the work for them.
Well, yeah, but you have places with hosted Exchange, no?
Yes, but we control that.
But it's hosted someplace else.
It's hosted through us. We host it.
He has his own
So
mail server.
You don't do any
I'm,
like rack space hosted Exchange or anything like that?
No,
Okay.
we can host it ourselves.
Like a typical implementation job, let's say $20,000. Does that sound fair?
For what you talking about, for a full server, network install, domain setup?
Yeah, the whole thing.
If it was a new, ballpark, let's say a server costs $4,000 or $5,000, a couple, $2,000 or $3,000 for install and setup, depending on how many workstations they had. I think a server installed, fully set up, is probably going to run $8,000. Of course, that can vary greatly by the kind of backup we're going to implement and things that, if there's certain requirements that the server needs, that's not standard. I would say 8 to 9 for a standard server installed.
Okay. For that, like being the price, can I ask how much of the total price goes towards security?
Security in which way? Antivirus, mail
No, just
filtering?
everything on the network regarding security.
Well, we like to put it in certain routers that have security, so that protects them from the outside. We recommend our spam filtering, so before any mail hits their Exchange server, it's filtered from spam or viruses before it even hits them. They have security software on the server and the workstations that's controlled and managed from the server, and their router has got filtering in there, application level filtering, packet filtering. So that's usually what we do to protect the networks.
Okay. The only reason I'm asking is because I have been to now, I want to say about 16 hours of Google Apps for Business webinars, which I know are nothing more than their salesmen saying everything positive about their stuff.
They
But
have
we're looking at it
16
for-
hours of webinars, really?
Yeah, I've been to more than that, actually. Now I think about it. We're actually looking at it for a user base that actually totals more than 9,000 users.
Let me jump in here real quick, Dor. I was on hosted Exchange for a little while, and then I talked to Lalo, and he's a Google Apps guy. So I thought, you know what, I'm going to give Google Apps a try. So I canceled my hosted Exchange, transferred it over to Google Apps, and that's where all the trouble started.
Well, but you also had the issue just setting up IMAP, right?
What's that?
You just had issues setting up IMAP.
No. The issues with the Google Apps was sync, 100% sync.
Sync with what?
If you're going to be using Outlook, so you've got sync with Outlook. If you're using the free Google Apps, which I'm guessing you guys wouldn't be since you're a large business, you have to run an applet that schedules itself to do the syncing between your calendar, the non-mail stuff that's built into Outlook. So I thought, okay, well, you know what, let's try the business because it's only $50 a user per year or whatever. Let's give that a try. So I signed up for that, So now it's a plugin instead of an applet, and it's just one more layer of something to go wrong. And I just
Well, I suggest no user to use Outlook just because that's a over $100 cost savings per computer right there.
And so I mean, it depends on your use case scenario, but as far as like most businesses out there, they live and die on Outlook. If something happens to that, they're going to be lost.
And I think hosted exchange for us, I think it's like $1 more. You get an Outlook license. So adding $1 a month gets you an Outlook license if they don't want to buy Outlook up front.
I'll say in our environment, 40+% of the help desk issues are because of Outlook. Outlook is a very breakable, fragile system, how it's set up and how profiles are kept and PST files are kept and created and stored and transferred and non-compacted
that's an excellent
automatic
point.
And that's totally true.
And that's exactly the notes I sent Steve about 2 hours ago about the topic for Podnutz Pro tomorrow night is PST files and OST files.
Yeah.
And so you can see why I don't want applets or plugins running on top of all that.
Well, I can tell you on our network, OST and PST files, Outlook 2003 even had a maximum file size of 20 gigs, I believe.
With the maximum recommended.
Yeah, where the actual warning comes off at like 6 gigs or something like that, telling you that your files
can be changed in the registry, but that's what they recommend.
Oh, no. Our files cannot get bigger than 3.6 gigs, or else all kinds of flaky stuff starts happening. On this same network, though, via the Google apps that we've tried, we've had direct access to 16 gigabytes of archived data, searchable, filtering, syncing with that. And
are you
we've
using
had no
an
issues.
application, or are you using the web interface for Google Apps? I mean, what's your use scenario? Because that really depends on what's going to work best for you.
Outlook 2007. And apparently their syncing thing handled network traffic better than the built-in Outlook, how it handles network traffic.
You're using, so y'all using Exchange right now, right?
Yeah.
Okay. And do y'all leave cached Exchange mode turned on?
No, absolutely not.
Yeah. Good.
No.
You shouldn't in that environment.
Well, of course not. No. And
it's all by default, and a lot of people don't turn it off because they don't know to turn it off, and that can cause issues.
And basically the entire database has to be flushed every 60 days, or response times just fall so poorly off. I mean, the one thing I liked about Google Apps, to be honest, was the amount of control you could do through the interface. That was one of the features that the administration liked and wanted us to look at because of it.
No, and I totally agree with you on that part.
If something goes wrong, do you have a phone number to call?
That was my other issue.
I'll say
Google
this. How many times in the last
service.
10 years when you used Google was it not working? Seriously.
But if it goes down once,
no.
You don't have anybody to call. See, if Exchange goes down, they call me. And if they call me because email's not working and I have no one to call, then they're going to look at me saying, fix it.
Well, no, seriously. In the last 10 years, when you've used Google, when has something not worked?
I don't use Gmail. So.
Well, yeah, because their downtime is actually less than their uptime. Is 99.9998. Which is more than anybody can guarantee for any other service that I know of.
I don't know, Dor. We're talking about search, right? When you talk about that uptime, this is something more for somebody specifically.
Well, Google Apps for Business for the last 5 years has had
Google
that 99.9998 uptime.
Okay, I didn't hear you guys talking at the same time.
Sorry. Go ahead, Dor.
Google Apps for the last 5 years has had the 99.9998 uptime.
I read an article about uptime, the way that companies report uptime, and I thought it interesting that there's no standard to report uptime. So let's just use Google for an example, and I'm not sure how they report their uptime, but if it wasn't a outage that affect all users they consider it that it wasn't down. So if 10 million users were down, it's not counted toward their downtime because 90 million were still up.
I
So
think
the
we're kind of getting
uptime can
past the
be
point here. I
skewed
mean,
depending on how they report their uptime.
Go ahead, Liam.
all that aside, I think we can agree that Google's kind of got the back end figured out as far as hardware and uptime. I mean they've got what, 15% of the traffic of the internet as a
Yeah.
whole. So I mean,
Yeah, I mean-
they've kind of got that back end. So I mean, that's a moot point. We can move past that at this point.
But I don't know. Having your servers up and uptime to me is different than if you have a problem with your Google. What's it called? Google Business? I can't even remember the name.
Apps.
Google Apps.
I mean,
well, you're
as
having a
far
problem with your
as-
Google Apps and something specific with your Google Apps that might be just affecting you. I mean, I don't. Is that uptime? Is that an uptime failure? I don't think it is.
But at the same time, we're going to have far more issues with your local ISPs and the people you're getting the internet from than you are with these kind of companies. Just statistically, I mean, I work for an ISP. I know this for a fact.
Yeah.
And you're going to have more issues with patches causing issues on Windows in my experience, or McAfee updates totally killing a server.
For
Oh,
sure.
well, if you
I
got
mean, so all
McAfee on the
this
server,
kinda-
you're asking for
you've
trouble,
gotta get
so-
down
I
to
know.
the
I can't pick that. They have it on there, and I can't do nothing about it. To me, the only really concern I have about Google Apps is it comes down to the privacy thing. They have complete and utter access to everything there, and that's a little bit scary. Now, everything is transferred in a cryptid tunnel back and forth kind of thing. And yeah, I guess Google, if they wanted to, could have access to a lot of stuff without us using the Google Apps. And it isn't that we are going to use it. We're just looking at it. We're entertaining the idea. But I think the real issue that I think is going to stop a lot of companies from using it is the privacy issue.
I believe so. And especially the small business users that I deal with, a few of them have talked about it, but the first thing they say is, but where actually is our mail? Where is it? Who has control over it? Who's looking at it? And I can only tell them what their policies are. They say it's secure. They say it's this, they say it's that. But they want to know when their email, they just feel safer with their email
it isn't
on
just
their
them
servers
saying
or
where it's at.
my servers.
It's been certified and validated where this information is at and who in fact does have actual access to it. The number of people who have access to it, I bet, are less than the people that have access to your email. It's only like 4 people who have direct access to where they can go in and get it. Everybody else, it takes 2 people to get. And it's in a secured, isolated environment where you have to have not only something you have, like a USB key, a fingerprint, a retinal scan, voice detection before you can get into where the actual data is stored.
Wow.
Yeah.
It's like the beginning of war games.
Yeah, I was going to say, Skynet, but yeah.
I'm thinking of a movie that's just like, what's that submarine movie with Gene Hackman and
Red October.
Hunt for Red October, right?
No, that was
That wasn't Gene Hackman.
Oh no, that was
no.
Sean Connery?
Sean Connery.
That was Sean Connery. Where they one wanted to launch the nuclear weapons and one didn't. I can see that going on inside of Google,
Yeah.
where somebody wants to do something and one doesn't.
I don't know. The only thing going through my head is like a McHale's Navy movie, so I don't know.
Turn the key. Turn the key. I think
Oh, that's right.
yeah, that was the beginning of war games too. He pulled a gun on him. All right, cool.
I just
Good
the Gmail, and I'm sure they had the back end worked out. Like Liam said, you don't get that big without knowing how to implement it. A lot of clients I talk to also fear that if their email or whatever is hosted on Google, Google really is a big target. So somebody's constantly, I'm sure, trying to hack them and take them down. So their Exchange server at their office is not as big a target as Google's mail servers are. And some
Plus-
clients express concern over that.
And when Matt
Plus,
says,
you've got the
go ahead, William.
direct access to that hard drive. So if something happens for some reason, either you or Google, You can get right to their information right away. They don't really have any control over how quickly Google gets to their failed hard drive. So
Yeah.
a lot of it's just peace of mind. Again, it depends on your customer or your specific needs.
Well, it's just like anything else. You shouldn't trust it solely. You should still back up, and you can back up Google Apps accounts, if you want someplace else. It isn't hard, and they're stored in a very friendly MBOX format, not a PSD format.
Can you do that centrally? So for all your 9,000 users, could you do that from one console? Or are you putting that on the users to do that? I mean, how does Google, I don't know how Google works that.
Me as an admin, I can do it. I don't need to have the individual users do it.
So is there any reason you can't just implement your own Google Apps backend at your place? So that you guys, I mean, you're using Google's API and all that jazz, but you guys would be hosting the actual servers. That seems kind of like the best of both worlds for you.
Well, it's closed source. We don't have access to their code.
Well, I'm not saying you have to have access to their code, but I mean, I don't have access to Microsoft's code, but I can run their operating system.
You can buy and download it. You can't buy and download Gmail. So
that's what I'm saying. I mean, that's kind of another thing as far as Matt's going. Like that would seem to be the perfect solution for you, really, Dor, because you seem to love their back end and the technology there, but you want to have full control. So if you could, somehow be able to run Google Apps in-house instead of through Google.
Yeah, and I'd say the one thing about the Google Apps that I've really liked and my administration also liked was the tie-in to Active Directory. They did not have to know extra passwords or anything. It actually authenticated via AD, which kind of amazed me.
Cool.
Right. That's just opening up port 389 through your router to your LDAP server. Yeah. A lot of things, and I'm sure that works well. I've had some vendors who say they can tie into Active Directory and their implementation is terrible and it doesn't work. I'm sure Gmail's works, otherwise they wouldn't offer it. But beware of other vendors saying they have Active Directory support.
Well, honestly, I've created applications that tie into AD. I don't understand why, and I've seen vendors have issues with it. I don't understand why they have issues with it. It ain't hard. It's a query. You run a query, you get a record back, and you validate the record.
Yeah,
it ain't rocket science.
And that's the thing, when they advertise that it works with Active Directory and it doesn't, you wonder, well, what kind of product are they developing here that this doesn't work? Especially when it's an advertised feature. We got this, the customer bought this because it was advertised to work with Active Directory and it doesn't, which goes back to my recommendations. I tell them it's advertised to work with Active Directory. I haven't tested it, so if you want to get it, we'll test it for you.
You'll be the guinea pig. All right, what do you say? I read the emails here. I got one email, one voicemail, and then if you have any tips, lay them on us. If not, we'll end off. We're at about the hour mark in the show. So, first email and only one is from Aaron. He's referring to Podnutz episode number 58. He says, "Hi, I was listening to your most recent podcast at the time, which was 58, and just wanted to share some insight. The method described to activate Windows 7 is completely legal and is the way OEMs activate in the factory." Now, actually, I don't remember in the show exactly what we talked about, but if you want to go back to Podnutz number 58, you'll hear it. He says, "I have found that you actually can use some of the programs to crack the activation in order to legally activate Win 7. The activation process uses a combination of a certificate and an OEM key. These cracking programs have these certificates and keys in a database, and what I have found is that you can use them in order to simply install the certificate and OEM key. This sounds shady, but is completely legal as the Windows activation process is not modified in any way. Just wanted to share this bit of knowledge. I have used this on many... Hang on. You want to say something after this? Hang on. I have used this on many clients and even on my own personal PC. I never had a problem. Since it is the OEM process for activation, if Microsoft were to flag these keys or certificates, they would break literally thousands of legit OEM activations for new PCs.
I love that it's legal 3 or 4 times and then a justification that it's okay at the end.
Right. Yeah.
Legal is not the same as according to a license.
Yeah.
There's license agreement, and then there's whether it's legal or not. Those two,
Right.
they're not
Yeah.
always the same.
But the license agreement is an attempt for the company to make something legal, right?
Well, this is legal for the vendors and OEMs to do, not for us to do. Hence, the application has the word crack
I
in
know.
it. I've never heard of an application called cracker, and yet it's legal. It can't be. I mean, granted, if you do it, it's probably almost impossible to tell you did it, and it's almost impossible to prove that you did it.
But it doesn't mean it's okay.
You're right. Doesn't mean it's okay.
Absolutely works great.
It worked great. All
It
right.
works great, but that's not how you want to run a business.
All right, take that email for what it was. Thank you for your input on that, guys. This is a voicemail. I don't remember who it's from. I don't want to call it. I want to play it. And here we go.
Hey, this message is for the Podnutz crew. Hey, I just want to say thanks. I love the new format. And Chris, thank you very much for the managed services for the residential idea. I've been kind of kicking around how to best manage that for a little while now, and the way you laid it out was actually quite simple and very good. And I think I'm going to try implementing that here very soon. I also wanted to chime in. You guys were talking about some of the crazy clients. Just share a quick story with you. Back when I first started, and before I really had my computer repair business, and I was just doing some Craigslist computer repair and consulting, that kind of thing, had a client call me up, wanted some data recovery done. He insisted on it being in-home, so I showed up as scheduled to do the in-home data recovery, and he wasn't there. He was actually over in India. Went ahead, proceeded with the data recovery. His wife was there. I was handling that. As I was doing the data recovery, I found saw some pictures of some questionable nature of the assumed husband with another woman. Didn't think anything of it. I went ahead and actually was cool about it, transferred the data. I actually hid the folder so she wouldn't accidentally stumble upon it. I was going to call him a few days later and let him know where the folder was hidden because I was going from one computer to another. But then when it came time for them to pay up the bill, they decided that the bill was too high. I quoted them the price originally, and that's exactly what the price was, and they refused to pay it. So she even got her husband on the phone. Small screaming match ensued. I kept my cool the entire time. Finally, I said, look, fine. You don't want to pay the full bill. You've already paid what you've paid, and that's going to be it. By the way, ma'am, take a look at these pictures. And I showed her where the pictures were. I walked out the door. So That's definitely a lesson to everybody. Don't piss off the waiters that bring you your food, and don't piss off the IT guys because they know everything. Once again, thanks, guys. Love the absolutely new format. It's wonderful.
Oh,
Wow.
thank you. Hey, was that legal?
That's freaking great.
Was that legal? Is that legal to do what
Depends
he did?
where
Was
you're
there
at.
anything he broke the law there in that?
No, I don't think so. She just showed the co-owner of the computer files on her computer.
That's interesting. That's
And,
very.
if he said, "Look, I'm going to show her these pictures. If you don't pay," that might have been a question.
well stated in the voicemail that you didn't do that. That's blackmail, right? Isn't that blackmail? If he did that with the money, I don't know. Anyway, I like how he says, "Don't screw with the IT guys; they know
He
everything."
could have offered a service. How about I delete these pictures for this much money? That's a
Dude,
service.
all I know is he better keep an eye out for the next couple months.
I know that's hardcore.
That is, man.
That's pretty ballsy. Yeah, be careful.
Nah,
let me tell you something.
Steve would do that at a freaking drop of a hat.
Who? Which Steve? Not me? Me?
No. D'Amico. We know he'd do that.
Okay.
He'd pull a gun to get his money. We know that.
I can tell you guys, one of my best abilities is the ability to be ignorant on demand. And by ignorant, I mean the true definition of the word ignorant. I, for instance, just copied 36 gig of files off one guy's dying hard drive onto external drive for him. I literally have no idea about a single file that was actually on that drive. I don't want to know a single file on that guy's drive, much less nude pictures with him and a mistress.
That's the thing. You know what caught me on that voicemail? Thank you for the voicemail and the compliments on the show, by the way. I'm just bringing this up to have a conversation. I don't think, even if those pictures were in a conspicuous spot where I thought the wife would find them, I would not touch them. You know, it's like that's getting involved right there. Like maybe you think that you're doing the husband a favor. Maybe the guy wanted her to see them. Maybe she already knew about them.
Maybe they're swears.
Exactly.
You know what they say: the road to hell is paved with good intentions.
Good point.
But here's another tip from that voicemail: don't leave without getting paid.
Yeah, really.
What would you have done?
I wouldn't have left without getting paid. I would say, "Here's the bill. You can pay it," and then I'm done.
And then they said they're not paying it. It's too high. I'm not paying your bill, Matt. It's too high.
Oh wait, I forgot something, and I go delete all the files I recovered.
I think Matt would do that.
I think so too.
All right, let's wrap this up, guys. Dor, if you give tips if you want, or you can just say, any last comments and where people could find you if they want.
I'll just remind people, communicating effectively also requires listening effectively. Get married. You'll get used to it. That's all I say.
All right, Matt.
I do have one quick tip, and I had to use this today. I think I've talked about it before, mxtoolbox.com. They've got one of the things on there you might not see or use. It's good to look up blacklist and look up MX lookups, but they have one called Analyze Headers, and you can paste email headers in this thing, and it gives you a nice little readout so you can see. There's an Analyze Headers tab. You can just copy the headers of an email, and it shows you every hop, everything that you can just clearly read, much easier than those headers. I had a customer today saying they were getting mail multiple times. So I copied and pasted the headers into this and showed them, look, it was actually sent twice. You received it twice because it was sent twice. And using this, he could see easily different message IDs, different send times.
Nice.
So he was able to see, okay, yeah, that was sent twice. Even though the sender said, no, I didn't send it twice. It was sent twice. So the email header analyzer comes in handy if you want to look at headers. And it's useful if somebody says, man, they sent me this email 10 minutes ago and it took me 10 minutes to get it. Even though I tell customers email is not instant communication, you can use this and show them where the delay was in the hop. If you want to show them, look, it was at this Yahoo mail server is where it was stayed there for 8 minutes and then it went to the next hop. So they can kind of know where the problem was.
Great tip, man. I'm going to be using this myself.
This is great.
Yeah.
Thank you, sir.
All right. Anything else, Matt?
Nope. That's it. Listen to Podnutz Pro Wednesday nights and, of course, every other Podnutz show on the network.
Thank you, sir. All right, Liam.
And leave reviews in iTunes for the shows.
Yes.
Good reviews, if possible.
Definitely. Liam.
Just a real quick one. As far as communicating, there's one thing I don't try not to over communicate on, and that's price. If somebody wants to bring it up, we'll start talking price. If they don't, they'll get a bill at the end and know exactly what it is. I find that if you start talking price, you're going to talk people out of stuff. If somebody doesn't want to know the price, it probably doesn't matter to them.
Very good point. Great tip.
Until they get the bill and say, this is too much, I'm not paying it. like our voicemailer, which is funny.
Open the folder. All right.
Open in case of non-payment.
That's great.
I put your receipt in this folder.
And where can people find you, Liam?
They can find me sitting in this chair occasionally on Tuesdays and Thursdays, or they can go to liamtech.com, or they can check me out on Twitter at liamtech,
Sounds good. Liam spelled the normal way.
That's right.
That's going to be it, guys, for Podnutz for tonight, episode number 62. Thank everybody for watching, streaming, listening, downloading, whatever you're doing. Hope you enjoyed it, and we'll see you next time.